Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Thought Atlas podcast, the space where curiosity leads, questions matter, and we explore the deepest ideas shaping human existence. On today's episode, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and often misunderstood topics, the relationship between science and faith. My guest today is Doug L., who works at the intersection of science, reasoning, and spiritual belief, helping people understand how logic, evidence, and faith can coexist rather than conflict. The conversation is going to challenge assumptions, stretch perspectives, and help hopefully leave you thinking a little deeper about reality, purpose, and what it really means to understand the world around us. Doug, welcome to the Thought Atlas podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
So, Doug, before we kick things off, can you tell?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you now. Could you repeat that?
Okay, sorry. So, Doug, before we kick things off, can you tell us more about yourself?
Sure. I studied math and physics at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is a well-known place in the United States. I'm very, very
Yes.
good at math.
Wow.
Studied theoretical math, graduated early, um, and it's a pretty hard school. Um, Then I became a lawyer. But when I was in high school, I read that life started in a dirty pond, which is total nonsense, by the way. And we can get into that if you wanted. But I thought science
Yeah.
was contrary to God. Uh, and I find that that's a view that a lot of people have. They think if you're going to be a rational being and follow science, and I love science, that somehow you can't have faith. So I've written books on this, and I'm just really overjoyed to be on your podcast to try and explain because it's the evidence is just amazing. Um,
Yes.
it is wonderful. People don't understand, and I think so many people are missing out enjoying their lives. Um, at least I find around me because they think that there's some sort of conflict between what we know about the world and about faith. And so, again, thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're welcome, and thank you for coming on the podcast. So, my first question is, what originally led you to explore the relationship between science and faith?
Well, when I was in my 30s, my wife wanted to get my son baptized. And even though I was an atheist, even though I was convinced at that time that this religion stuff was nonsense, I said, yes, of course. I mean, nobody wants to fight with their wife, right? So we
Yes.
went to church. We went to church, and I think I felt the presence of God. I knew for sure that those people had something special. They had a peace and a joy that I did not have. And so I started asking, I used to think again when I was in high school that science and God were contrary. So I started studying it. I learned all about biology and DNA. I learned about the universe, how it works. Uh, I love that sort of stuff. And what I found, I've been studying this now for 30 to 40 years, and what I find each year is stronger and stronger, overwhelming, undeniable evidence that science proves the existence of God.
So, at what point did you realize that these two worlds don't have to conflict with each other, science and faith?
I think when I was in my 40s, actually, I realized I started reading molecular biology, how DNA works, how our
Yes, yes.
bodies, and DNA is it's a digital code. And just to break that down a lot for some of your listeners, uh, Digital code is just a code that comes in letters. Okay, so computers work on digital on off switches, so to speak. You and I are talking by the miracle of digital code that people have figured out how to harness. Writing is another form of a digital code. Okay, there's different, in every language, there's different letters or symbols or spaces or things that you put in an order and it means something. Well, DNA has four different letters, and it is a digital code. Okay. And just overwhelming. We have 3.2 billion with a B, billion letters of DNA, and almost every one of our maybe 30 trillion with a T cells. Okay, so when I started looking at that and being a math guy, I just thought of the odds of getting that all this right by chance. And I realized can't possibly. Uh, it's just crazy and it's too complicated. And that when I looked at the odds of putting this together by chance, I and a number of other people concluded that there was a designer and we were created.
Yes. So what you just said reminds me of a statement I read somewhere. When you begin your journey in empirical science, in the beginning, you think to yourself, there is no God. Then, towards the end of your journey, we finally come to the conclusion that there is definitely a God for sure. So, moving on to the next question. Why do you think modern society often treats science and faith as enemies?
I think because we're being bullied. And I think I was bullied in high school, and not physically bullied, but mentally, intellectually bullied by a lot of people who like to think they're sort of our intellectual betters. Okay. Uh,
Yes.
People, top professors. I mean, I've sat at dinners at the Harvard Faculty Club. Harvard's another big university. A lot of you, and I can't believe the nonsense these professors tell me as they try to deny the existence of God. Uh, but we are bullied. You read articles all the time about nonsense that I'm just about to write. I do a blog. I'm writing a blog post, starting it this morning. And last year, there's a scientific journal called Nature, which is probably the most prestigious scientific journal in the world. Last
Wow.
year, they did a study of the comparison between human and chimpanzee DNA. So you've probably heard this number, or a lot of people have heard this number, for example, that our DNA, the code that builds us, is
Yes.
99% similar to the code that builds chimpanzees. Well,
Yes.
Nature magazine 2000 last year, 2025,
Yeah.
did an article that says, although they didn't really highlight it, they kind of buried it, but it
Mm.
says that it's really 85%. Okay.
Mm.
So here's how it works. We have a lot of the same parts and a lot of the same technologies as chimpanzees. I mean, we're similar. There's no doubt about that. But when you look, but
Yeah.
we have a lot. We have hundreds of millions of DNA code in us that are not the same. And that
Mm.
is huge. So we have so much new technology that, we're similar, but this is an example of being bullied because they don't tell you the truth. And that's what I want to try to help. It is, there's, there's no, they have no scientific evidence for how the world was created. They come up with these theories, and try to force it on you. They come from a mindset that there cannot be a God. And they think they're very smart. I think my joke is that they think they're the smartest creatures in the universe, and I don't. Okay, I think God is the smartest,
Yes.
and
Yes.
by far superior to them. So
Step.
we are bullied. we read nonsense. Okay, and I'll get into another area, frankly, that uh, a lot of people would disagree with me on, including, these Harvard people. But the universe is not billions of years old.
Oh
It's
wow,
only
that's
thousands of
quite
years old. Okay. The
true.
Bible is true. Okay. If you read the Bible, the earth was created less than 10,000 years ago. And here's one simple reason why you know that's true. And there's over 100 scientific facts is let's go back to this code in our bodies. Okay. Um, so you get the idea that we have like books of information in our bodies. The analogy I like to use is imagine you had a very thick book with lots of fine print on it. Now, and now put 1,000 of them in a pile. That's about how much code it takes to build a human being. Okay.
Oh wow.
So every generation, there's errors. Mutations is the word. Okay. Problems. The
Yeah.
code isn't copied exactly. There's about 100 typos in those books, basically. So
Yes.
though that's very complicated code and has a lot of redundancy, a lot of features that protect it from errors. But very gradually, generation by generation,
Error
human
seeping.
exactly, you got it. So we're going downhill. And the mathematics prove this beyond a doubt. And there's computer programs that prove this. We are going downhill. Human beings did not come into existence millions of years ago. We couldn't have. We'd all be dead by now from the errors,
Oh.
the copying
Yeah.
errors, the typos. So and that's more evidence that the Bible is real and faith is real. So they have no evidence for how anything exists. They have. Have you heard about this fine tuning of the laws of physics?
Fine tuning of the laws of physics.
Yeah, let me talk
No,
about that. Is that okay?
yes, yes, sure. Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, so the universe is governed by laws
Yes,
and called the laws of physics. So the very first question is, how can you have laws without a lawgiver, right?
exactly.
Think about that. How can you have the laws of physics without a lawgiver?
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
these professors don't, they just say, well, the laws are. Well, where did the laws come from? And,
Yes,
oh, by the way, well, I'm going to uh, get off my subject a little bit. I'll come back to the fine tuning. But, you know, originally science was developed because of Christianity. The historical basis is very clear. When people came to believe in that the universe was rational and there was a God, when Christianity came to be, people
yes,
tried to figure out how God did it. And that's why Western science developed mostly around, Europe and the Middle East. It didn't develop in
yes,
China, even though the Chinese were very advanced and had a lot of things thousands of years before anybody else, or Egypt, or in
yes,
Iran. It developed because of Christianity. Um, but let's go back to the fine tuning. So science is
yes,
from Christianity, but the laws of physics. So there's lots of in these laws. There's constants, meaning that there's sort of numbers in them, like the strength of the gravitational pull field. Okay, so
yes.
gravity has a
It's the constant.
force that people measure. Okay, the speed of light
Yes,
is a speed that people measure. Okay. There's lots of other ones, the strength of the other
yes,
forces in the universe, and so on and so on. When you look at atomic structure, there's
yes,
dozens, maybe 100 of these numbers that are in these laws. Okay. And when you look at them, if you tweaked any one of them slightly, life could not exist.
yes,
This is accepted science by the top scientists everywhere that
yes.
this universe is designed. It's like, imagine there's a control room for the universe with knobs, that you could, oh, I'm going to turn the strength of gravity a little bit. I'm going to make the speed of light a little different. I'm going to change
Yes,
the mass of the proton or the electron. I'm just going to make these things a little different. Well, life could not exist. Everyone
yes,
is exactly set right. And for example, the strength of gravity, that's set right to about like one finding one marble out of a pile of marbles that went out to the nearest star. That is how fine-tuned gravity is. And that was proven by Stephen Hawking, who wouldn't accept God. I guess he didn't like that, he was sick, but it's top science. So you have a universe that was created. There's no there's a lot of BS theories, excuse that me, but about that. You have a universe that
yes,
was
yes, yes, yes,
designed. You have that life was created. You have that life was designed. I call those the big four, and
yes,
it's uh, people don't want to believe it. So you read this propaganda about things being millions of years old. That's based on false science. Okay.
yes. On studio
Um,
science.
yeah. Have you've heard of something called carbon dating?
Yes, yes. I'm actually a science student. I studied engineering.
Yeah. Well, carbon dating is that there are different unstable versions of the carbon atom called carbon 14, and it decays over time. So
Yes,
when something stops living, if you look at you have something dead uh, or something that was created by that's not getting any more carbon in it, you can figure out how old it is. There's a number
yes,
of assumptions in that. Well, carbon dating is, they use this and then they like to say that, we're old. Well, carbon, this carbon 14 is found in all diamonds. Diamonds are supposed to be billions of years old. And after 100,000 years, if they were that old, you couldn't measure the carbon 14. Carbon 14 is in all diamonds. It's in all fossils. All these dinosaur bones have carbon 14 in them. They can't be that old. So they just kind of make up this stuff. I've done a blog on that. And it's kind of a long winded answer to your question, but
yes,
we are being bullied by people who don't want God to exist. They don't want to have
yes.
to go to church, right?
Yeah, yeah,
They don't want to.
actually.
They don't want to. They don't like this idea that you got to be nice to your neighbor. You know,
It's all, it's
like
all,
Jesus.
it's all a means to an end, basically.
Yeah, and they sure don't want to give 10% of their money to the church, which the Bible says you're supposed to do, right? Uh, and they want to think they're big and important, and we're supposed to listen to them, so they make up this stuff. Um, and this isn't just me talking, okay? There are over 1,000 scientists who would agree with everything I'm saying, telling you. Maybe
Yeah.
thousands.
The
A
thing is,
lot of scientists.
yes,
Go ahead, sorry.
I might, okay. So I myself, I actually agree. This conversation just reminded me of a conversation I was having with a friend of mine. So we were talking about the solar system. So I told my friend that our solar system is actually very, very complex. It's not as simple as you think it is. Take, for example, our galaxy is moving in interstellar space. Our solar system is moving within our galaxy. Then our planet is moving within the solar system. Jupiter, for example, just moves out of wherever it is by an inch during the course of the revolution and the rotation and the movement of all these celestial bodies. We might cease to exist. I was like, you need to understand, if the Earth was just a little bit closer to the sun, we would all be dead. If it was a bit far away, we would all be dead. When you look at all these things from an empirical standpoint, you will come to the conclusion that there has to be a higher form of intelligence that had to plan and arrange all these things according to where they should be for everything to have this balance that we are currently experiencing. So at the end of the day, when you look at everything from an empirical perspective, you would come to the conclusion that definitely, yes, there is a God. There has to be a metaphysical being that has this level of intelligence to arrange and plan something of this sort. So yes, I actually agree with you on that.
Yes. There's so many things that people want to say are coincidence. Um, One of
Yes,
my favorite things is that, the moon and the sun look the same size from Earth.
yes, and
Okay.
that's just crazy.
And so that's why you get eclipses. Eclipses are important events. And so is that a coincidence? Because that allows us to date, for example, the birth and death of Jesus from eclipses. We
Yes,
can, and they're both beautiful. There's been science discovered. They proved Einstein's theory of relativity by looking at light bending during an eclipse. Um, it's There's just so much, but that's why is the sun the same size as the moon when the
yes,
sun is something like 400 times further away? It's pretty cool. Why do we have this big moon that keeps us stable? You pointed out one. What Jupiter? Jupiter's like the vacuum cleaner of the solar system. It sucks up a lot of dirt that would otherwise, harm us here on Earth. Without Jupiter, we'd get hit by space junk all the time. So, lots. The more you look
yes.
at it, the more you see God.
That's very nice. Yes. So moving on, from your perspective, what does science tell us about consciousness and where does faith step in?
Where does what step in?
Where does faith step in?
Faith and
Yes,
consciousness.
faith.
Okay,
Yes.
great question. So, well, what is consciousness? Let's start with that. There's no scientific explanation for why we're conscious. Um, and I'm reading books that consciousness, the brain is not, our brains are not just meat machines. We have a consciousness given to us by God. And I'm going to give you just two examples of why the human brain is so spectacular. By the way, the human brain is the most advanced technology in the universe,
Yes. Wow.
I thought. Okay, but let's go back. Let's stick with consciousness. So when you do some types of the brain has a lot of blood in it. So to do some types of brain surgery, they have to cool the body and take the blood out of the brain. For example, people have been born with their brains merged together, twins. Okay. So they've done, anyhow, for a variety of reasons, they have to operate on the brain, get in there. When they do that, they have to cool the body, take the blood out of the brain. They can't do it for very long, so they got to work quickly. All right. But when they do they find that the patient is still conscious. Okay. The patient will, now the brain's totally dead. Are you there? Sorry, I lost you for a minute. There you
Okay.
are.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay.
So,
I lost
yeah.
you. So I'm talking about this experiment, this type of surgery where they take the blood out of the brain. They find that when they bring the person back, the person can remember things when the brain was dead. How is that? There's another phenomenon about
Wow.
consciousness called terminal lucidity. And this is when a lot of people uh, We have a lot of dementia in the US because we have a lot of old people. I don't know about you, but you're familiar, I'm sure, with dementia. You're familiar
Yes, yes.
with people being very
Schizophrenia,
sick.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah, Alzheimer's, exactly. You're familiar with people being in a coma, meaning they're not really conscious. So
Yes,
a lot of times these people are approaching death, and a priest or ministers goes to their house to give them last rites to bless them. It
yes.
happens. This has happened thousands and thousands, maybe a million times. When the priest or the minister shows up, the person is fully awake, fully conscious. The family members are amazed. I was talking to a priest at my church, and I was telling him about this phenomenon. He says, "Oh, yeah, I've seen that several times." They walk into a room where grandpa is dying and he hasn't spoken to anybody for months. He's awake, he's fully conscious, he remembers everything. He has an intelligent conversation. The priest leaves and he dies a day or two later. So
Oh, wow.
why does the brain suddenly come back when the priest and when the spirit of God comes? There's so much about consciousness being a wonder and
Wow.
pointing to pointing to an immortal soul. So when which supports Christianity. You know, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believed in him should not
It was
perish but
only
have
begotten son.
eternal life. Okay.
Right.
So these show that there is a consciousness. There's a part of us that's eternal. And I
Yeah.
love this stuff.
Yeah. So, so, yes. Do you think science alone can ever experience?
Do I think what? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you very well.
Okay, sorry. Do you think science alone can ever fully explain human experience?
No, no,
Wow.
not
Exactly. Given
not
everything
if
we've
not if
discussed
they
so far, it's
exclude
actually
God.
plausible. Yes.
I'm
Given
sorry, go
everything we've
ahead.
discussed so far, it's plausible to think so. Um, so do you think if God exists, of which you and I both believe he does, but most people don't. So if he exists, how should science approach that possibility?
I think they should be honest. They should be say it's clear the universe was created, that it's clear it was designed, it's clear life was created, it's clear life was designed. They should be open, and they're not.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, I want to ask you a personal question. How has your work changed the way you experience life?
Oh, it gives me joy. I felt joy was missing in my life when I was an atheist. I feel I was robbed of joy, bullied again into believing that there was a conflict between science and God. And uh, it gives me great joy now to know that God exists, that God is real, that Jesus is real. And it gives me great joy to talk to you and other people about this.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And I'm happy that it gives you that kind of joy. So moving on, I have a set of rapid fire questions I want to ask you. You can either answer with a phrase or a sentence. So the first one
Okay,
is logic, logic or intuition.
both,
Okay. So the second one is evidence or experience.
both.
Mhm. I figured. So the next one is certainty or mystery.
Both. I
So
mean,
definitely the
it's
last,
all of this is so complicated. There's certainty in parts. There's great mysteries. It's
yes,
all
yes.
wonderful.
So the last one, I'm very sure you're going to pick the both of them, but I'm still going to ask. The last one is knowledge or wisdom.
I'm going to go with wisdom. There's a lot of
Wisdom.
phony
Okay.
knowledge out there. You need to know the difference between what's true, and that requires wisdom.
Oh yes. Oh, that's wonderful. So these are my final questions for you, Doug. What do you think humanity fundamentally misunderstands about reality?
Well, I think humanity needs to understand that our universe is like a fishbowl. Okay, we can't see out. It's a pretty big fishbowl, but what I mean by that is there's something outside. And this is proven by a quantum mechanics experiment called quantum entanglement. People could look it up if they want. But when people try to
Yeah,
imagine God,
Schrodinger's cat.
what's that? I'm sorry.
Schrodinger's cat. I think
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
story from
yeah.
the quantum mechanics and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So when people try to imagine God, God's not in our fishbowl. He can enter it, but God
Oh
exists
wow.
outside of space, outside of time. So
Of
what
course.
we experience in our universe and is only what we can see in our fishbowl. We know nothing about what's outside the fishbowl except what God tells us. And I think that's a way of
Exactly.
looking at the mystery that helps put reality in perspective.
Oh, that's wonderful. That. So the last question is, if there is one idea you wish humanity would deeply reflect on, what would it be?
I'm sorry, what was the question? Forgive me.
Okay. If there is one idea you wish humanity would deeply reflect on, what would it be?
Okay. Um, the wonder of existence.
Can you
It,
elaborate on
it,
that?
I think it's a wonder.
Oh
And
wow.
people should
Okay.
appreciate that it's a wonder and it didn't come about by chance.
Exactly. I would agree with that. Doug, this has been a deeply thought-provoking conversation. I want to thank you so much for coming on the Thought Atlas podcast, for sharing your perspective, your insights, and your expertise. Where can my listeners learn more about your work?
Sure. Well, I've written 4 books on science and God, and I don't make money on them. I lose money on all of them, but I just
Oh,
write
wow.
them because I want to spread the word. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
uh, I have a website. It's called countingtogod.com. Okay. You can also go to thegodproofs.com, which is the name of my latest book. And on the godproofs.com, I've got some short videos that prove the existence of God, meaning just a few minutes. And they're wonderfully
Yes.
done and animated, wonderfully
Yeah.
done. So if you go to countingtogod.com, you can sign up for my blog where I'll talk about all this science and you can find out about my background, my credentials. Uh, you
Yes.
can you can watch my lecture at MIT on science. You can again access my books and so on. And if you go to the God Proofs you can also contact me on countingtogod.com if anybody wants to do that. If you go to the godproofs.com, you can watch these what are amazing videos that I think are changing lives
Okay, then.
because they're addressed at they are aimed at young people.
Oh, wow.
And
Yes. Yes.
that's important to reach people young.
So, and to everyone listening, please don't forget to check out Doug's websites and his videos. Doug, it's been a pleasure having you on the Thought Atlas podcast. Please take care of yourself and continue to do God's work. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, and God bless all you do.
Thank you. Take care, Doug. I would really love to do
Bye.
this again some other time. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks. Very nice.
Bye.